Welcome, and thank you for watching Dying in Grace. This show is dedicated to exploring all aspects of living and dying well. Death is the last taboo in our culture, and we believe that the more we can talk about it, the more we can befriend it. Our goal is to reintegrate death as part of our living culture. My name is Arlene Stepputat, and if you want to know a little bit more about how I got involved with befriending death, you can go to our website, www.dyingingrace.com, and on there you'll see a little video, 3-minute video clip about me and my life and how death taught me how to live in grace more deeply. We also have besides our website, dyingingrace.com, you can follow us, Twitter, at Dying in Grace. So if you're a Twitter person, please Twitter us. You can be a follower. And we also have a YouTube channel, which is Dying in Grace. And lastly, our show is broadcast on TVSB on channel 71 in Santa Barbara. So our purpose is to educate the community, and each week we bring a community expert. And tonight our guest is Kate Carter, the founder and president of LifeChronicles. So welcome, Kate. Thank you.
Thanks, Arlene. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're really happy you're here tonight. So for people that don't know, can you tell us a little bit about what LifeChronicles is and how it got started?
Well, it's our 20-year anniversary this year, January 27th, and it goes back to when I was doing a television internship about 22 years ago. And when I finished and I knew how to produce video from the bottom up, I wanted to do something meaningful with it, but I didn't know what that was. And then 2 years later, a really close friend of mine was diagnosed with breast cancer just 6 weeks after her husband passed from ALS, and their children were 16, 13, and 10. And all of us were convinced that she would survive because how could lightning strike this family twice? And then months later, she told me they advised her to get her affairs in order. And just like any friend, I was trying to think, what could I do? And it took me a couple of days for the light to go on. And I called her and I said, Terry, I'd like to sit you in front of a camera, and I hope you'll tell the children everything you'd like them to know for the rest of their lives. And then 2 months later, the light went on that this was that thing that I could do with what I know how to do. And a month later, the day she passed, I decided this is it. I can't talk about it anymore. I'm going to start this. And I called Gail Rink, who'd been many years the director of hospice in Santa Barbara, and I called Tom Rollerson, the founder of the Dream Foundation, and said, this is what I'm going to do. And here we are 20 years later. We've done 1,700 videos in 41 states, over 200 cities, and more than we ever thought it would be. It was much more than we ever thought it would be.
Well, what a beautiful testimony to your friend. I mean, what a legacy her death left, not only for her family, but for not just the Santa Barbara community, but the much greater, I want to say, world community because of the amount of things that you've done. So you wanted her to tell her story to her children. And why do you think it's important at the end of our lives to tell our story?
Well, it kind of works in a couple of different directions. It's really important to the person who's dying. We discovered as we went along, it brought great peace of mind, continues to bring great peace of mind to these people who are passing, particularly if they're young parents. I just did a 39-year-old mother with 6- and 4-year-old daughters in Boston last week. And the peace of mind it gives her to know that when she's gone, her children will not just remember the sight and sound of her. We have a study that shows they will remember what it felt like to be with her. But then for the people who remain, it becomes that way to connect to that person that for little children, they don't even remember that person except with the video. And for surviving spouses or maybe adults that lost someone, it's just a way to continue to remember that person and not feel the loss so profoundly.
Well, and with the advent of technology, people can preserve those memories. I know I certainly wish I had had something like that for my parents. Just the sound of their voice would bring me great comfort if I had something like that, so I can understand that. So how do you get your referrals? You said you taped in Boston. How do people find you, and how do you choose? And are most of your people older adults that are dying?
Well, you know, our focus is seniors and seriously ill, which is an easy way to remember what we do. And I don't know the numbers. It seems more and more our work is dying young parents leaving very small children. And we're pretty sure the reason that's happening is because the word is out. Because most of those referrals come from other people who were filmed, who will call a friend that they hear is in a similar situation and say, we did this, you need to do it too. It'll be so important to you. So there are a lot of online support groups. So sometimes I'm going from Juneau, Alaska to Jackson, Mississippi to Boston all within a few days because they've been passing me around, you know, in their environment, because they're talking about what can help at this time, you know. And a lot of them, if they've reached the point where there's nothing medically that can be done for them, they realize there are other things we need to do for our family. So it's really empowering for the person who's dying. So back to your question though, sometimes it comes from agencies, hospices, cancer centers. We've done over 80 families for Dana-Farber Cancer Center at Harvard, Stanford Cancer Center calls, Johns Hopkins Kimmel Cancer Center calls, senior facilities sometimes call, but all different kinds of ways. But a lot of it continues to be word of mouth, people who've had this and say, you need to do this. It was wonderful for us.
So I mean, certainly if a friend recommends something, there's a sell there, but I would imagine that for some people, when they're first approached with the idea, there's resistance. So what is it that you tell them to alleviate their fears or their concerns or their sense of, you know, it's a TV big deal thing? What is it that you do to convince them that it's a gift?
Well, it's a great question because there's an issue that started in the beginning and it continues to this day, and that's that often people feel that if they do this, it means they've given up. And even someone who's been given a terminal diagnosis will probably not give up. And I don't have any judgment on that. People can give up or not give up. I don't have any judgment. Everybody's dealing with this the best they can. But what we try to convey to them is, look, this is not about giving up. This is about taking care of a piece of business that if you live to be 90, you'll still be glad you did this. I had that conversation with this 39-year-old mother. We were hoping and praying that you can somehow overcome what's happening. And if you live to be 90, again, you'll love watching this when you're in your 90s. No one regrets doing a video. They only regret when they don't do a video. So those are the kind of conversations we have. We try to take the onus on this being something that means you've given up. But I also tease them about, you know, often they're concerned about their appearance because they've been very ill.
Right.
So one of the things I ask them to do is not wait, because I always tell them you're never going to look better than you do today. And they always laugh because it's true for everyone.
Right,
None
of
us
course.
looks any better every day,
better
right?
tape today than tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right.
But in their positions, it's something even more critical. But we do try to convey things to them in a way that doesn't make them feel upset or sad. They're already dealing with a lot. So much of our conversations with them are to put them at ease and to build our trust with them.
And I think that we have a clip of kind of a couple who talks about the experience afterwards. And I think they actually speak about their before anticipation and then the end result. So hopefully we can run that tape.
Well, first wrote about 3 smart patients online. Candidly, I first thought it would be awkward and
hokey, maybe.
Hokey.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really think it would be that worthwhile. I trusted and checked out the website, your website. Still thought it might be hokey, and somehow found it within myself to trust, to call. And that was the biggest step, was actually making a phone call.
Contacting.
And then having a great conversation with your folks. And then hearing that it was not my preconceived, I still had doubts, but had some of my preconceived, like, oh, this could be really bad, dispelled quickly. And then even until today, in meeting you, there's still those, I mean, I love that you didn't prep us on the questions.
I love that, yeah.
And I would encourage anybody, don't try and sneak through that. But I had doubts because I didn't know the questions. You could come in here and say, okay, we're going to talk about your favorite colors. And what it turned out to be was questions that were, for me, rewarding and transforming I would encourage anybody to step through that little barrier of, well, should I really make the phone call? Just pick up the phone and make the phone call, and let your conscience be your guide.
And it's been very, I mean, just from the very beginning, you're very warm and welcoming, and you feel like an old friend walking through the door, so you don't feel, there's no awkwardness about it, you know. And I mean, even the kids felt a sense of, I don't know, even the kids felt comfortable with it.
Yeah, they were comfortable. That's so remarkable that you have 4 kids, 6 and younger, that you were able to negotiate 7 and under. What, I don't know what the kids are. We have 4 kids, I guess. And you were able to negotiate your way through the complexities of the conversation that we had with children also. That's pretty remarkable. I'm not sure that I really believed that this was that important. I think it was one of those, well, maybe it could be worthwhile, and it turned out now at the end of this to discover that it was really that important. To ask what my purpose was before, I would say, I don't know. But now I could say that the purpose is to give our family, and hopefully Liz will tell the story in 20 years, but to give our family a point of reference and a memory in itself.
Right. I think it's given me a chance to say some words to my children that I might not be able to say. And some of my children are not young and old enough to comprehend what's going on. And this will give them a chance to look back and see me when I was healthier. And get to know me a little bit. It puts me at ease knowing that they'll get this from us, our stories, how we interact, how I talk to them. It's comforting to know that a part of me will live on in this with them. And I didn't want to think about it very much because it's very saddening, but I'm so happy we did this for them and for me and for my husband too, who I know will watch it. And I'm thankful that I get to say thank you to all my loved ones and friends. I want to be laughing and smiling and saying thank you, you know. I just really appreciate this a lot.
So Kate, thank you for sharing that beautiful clip. I commented when I first watched it, I didn't know who the patient was until it got in. But you commented while we were watching it, you had some things you wanted to share about that video. So please.
Well, there's something important to understand, and you hear him talking about how he wasn't sure when he called. There's often when we show up a person in the family, and it could be the person we're filming, but often it's someone else, a spouse or a brother or something, who's not quite on board. They don't quite understand what it is we're doing. They're not even quite sure that this is something they should be doing at this time. And I never worry about that because it's just a matter of them observing what we're doing, watching a little bit of it, and by the time I leave, they're the one hugging and kissing me because they finally get it. Because we can't share a whole lot with them before we get there, and part of that is because we need it to be spontaneous so that it's more authentic. But also, we are going to open up some conversations if I get that feeling that they're open for it, that are conversations that they probably would not have about end of life if we weren't sitting there having a conversation.
So just by virtue of them opening the dialogue, you can bring out some nuggets, maybe of something that has never really been spoken, or some heartfelt, loving final message. Even though it may not be the final message, it's a message that lives forever for everyone.
Right, and there are things that sometimes they just aren't talking about. You know, you'll hear them say, well, we don't want to talk about dying around mom. Well, mom wants to talk about it.
Right.
And once I get a sense of that, I will go there. I will only go as far as they want to go. I'll never lead them somewhere they don't want to go. But I will lead them to conversations that they would likely not have had. They've told us we would not have had these conversations if you hadn't invited us to. And they're so glad that they did.
Yeah, and I know as they talked about, you bring the children in too and the parents. What touches you the most about this work? And what lessons have you learned? Because you've said you've filmed thousands of people at this point. So What touches your heart the most, and what lessons have you learned?
I think probably what touches me the most is the courage that it takes. It takes courage for someone to face their mortality and decide to do this, even though I try very hard to have them. You know, there are times I'll say to them, stay right here, don't project out, don't start thinking about what may happen, what's going to happen. Let's stay right here so that they're not emotionally overwhelmed and they can talk. But I'm just moved by their courage. I'm moved by their love, because I know that that's what drives the courage, is that love, that they want to do whatever they can to help their family, and that's why they do it. It's hard to watch families who are losing a parent. It's the worst, I think, to watch parents losing a child. It's really difficult. So people say to me all the time, how do you do this day in and day out? I focus on what it means. I'm fully aware of what's happening. I'm fully aware that this is a tragedy in their family, but what we're focusing on is the ability to do something that's going to help after they're gone.
Yes, and the permanence of that gift, and that it can be shared and viewed when people are ready, whenever that is.
And sometimes it's not for a long time, but you're absolutely right. And I know that some of these conversations, they're great that they have them, but they're recorded as well, so they can review them as time goes by. Because, you know, anyone who's been through anything close to this knows that there's a period of time where you can't deal with these things, but when you're ready, you'll be grateful to have this to review and try to, you know, kind of sort through what happened.
Yeah, and like I said, just to have the image and the voice, you know, just to have that with the person alive, not a still photo that's on in a frame somewhere, but
there's so
an
much
animation
more
of that. Yes,
right.
it's beautiful. So I also wanted to ask you, how do you nurture yourself? How do you sustain this? And I just want to say, Kate, it takes great courage to do the work you do. And I just really acknowledge you for sticking with it. I mean, it's heartbreaking work. I know firsthand, it's heartbreaking work, and yet it's such a gift. So how do you keep yourself going in the face of running all over the country? And I mean, you have a crazy schedule. How do you nurture yourself and keep going?
Well, it helps an awful lot to know what it means to these families, and they make it very clear what it means to them. I get a lot of love. I get a lot of love from this work. But I do something that some people will laugh after. If I've had a really intense filming, I'll go straight to the movies. I'll literally be whatever town I'm in, I'll go on Yelp and where's the local movie theater and what's showing. Now, as I've said before, I won't see Manchester by the Sea because from what I've heard, it would be hard for me even if I didn't do this work. But I try to see something that's either really nourishing to me or really, really funny. Because if there's a takeaway I have from this work, a couple, one is, first of all, if you don't know what you want to do with your life, you should try to figure it out, because clearly we never know how much time we have to live on this planet, so we should try to figure out what that is, or at least be open to it. I don't think you can make those things happen, but be open to it. Secondly, I think that we should never use the B word with our friends and family. I never tell my friends or family I'm too busy for them. I think after doing this work, I realize that they're the most important thing, and I find I never let them down. And thirdly, I think we should laugh and have as much fun as we can. I think that's what we're here for. There's that George Harrison song, Beware of Darkness, and he said, that's not what we're here for, you know, and I so get that from doing this work. So people may think my work is really sad, but you can't believe how much laughter there is that goes in these videos, because we're not focusing on the dying so much as we are the life that they've led together and the love that they have for each other.
And that's really the essence of what this program is designed to do, because essentially what you're talking is you live every day in grace. And if you do that, then it's easier to die in grace. And I agree with you. I think in the work I've done with dying, it makes me know that, because none of us know when our time is coming, and none of us know what's going on, each day is sweeter, and I try not to take anybody or anything for granted. It really does keep you present in drinking in what's here. You know,
Right.
It's really true. However, I wanted to switch gears a little bit, because besides the fact that you tape, you know, the seniors and the sick, as you said, you've done some other very interesting projects in our community. So could you tell us a little bit about a couple of them?
We've done so many ones that were kind of out of our scope, but we were asked to, and we were thrilled to do it. For example, Congregation B'nai B'rith commissioned us to do videos about a handful of their World War II survivors, or they were actually in the military. And we did 15 of them for them, and it was an absolutely fascinating project. And what we did was we made it into a 15-minute piece that they showed at their event. I think they've used it for other things. But we also gave a full project to each person, each of their families, which is sometimes 2 hours of footage.
Right.
So we gave that to each of the families, which they really loved. But it was fascinating for us. We had already done 10 years before. The Pierre Clyson's Foundation Military Museum had commissioned us to do the same, and we did 20 for them. So what's interesting about that is that time those people were in their early 80s. Now they're in their early 90s, and now, truthfully, to try and get more World War II vets, most of them, it will be at the very end of the war that they may have served very briefly.
Right. Yeah,
So
we're losing them.
We're
very
definitely
much
losing them.
so. Very
So it's been
much.
amazing to get them. They were so. I love filming seniors. You know, it makes them feel valued, and I hate to say it, but our culture is not good at valuing seniors. Other cultures are much better
That's true.
than we are, and so to see them. I remember we were filming at the Friendship Adult Daycare Center, and one man stood up and he said, "You don't know what it means to us that you come here and want to hear our stories, that you even care about our stories."
Yeah.
It's pretty touching.
Yeah, it is. I also know that you did something with Isla Vista and also in the recent mudslide
Right.
debris flow. So do you want to talk to us about those?
Sure, I can tell you a little bit about the Isla Vista students that were killed in that shooting. It's the most difficult project we ever had to do because it was so difficult to find people in that age group who could speak to us about it. They were so
Yeah.
traumatized. So we got some, not as much as we wanted to get, but we knew that we wanted to create something for the families from that. So when the fire happened, and you know how shut down we all are, our office had to close. We couldn't
Right.
even turn our computers on.
Right.
And then we thought, well, when the New Year's over, we'll gear back up, and then the debris flow happened. And it was 2 days after when we realized that there were 23 precious lives that will not return. It took a little while for the light to come on and for us to realize what we can do is what we know how to do, and we are creating videos for each of those people that was lost. So friends and family are sharing stories about them so that future generations will remember them. And some of the families, the Canton family in particular, have been very on it, sending people to us and lining people up for us to film and record those stories. It's been pretty touching. And then we're also doing a documentary about the impact emotionally on our community of what happened. But it'll start in Ventura and Santa Paula, where the fires started with that trauma, on into Ojai and Carpinteria and into Montecito and Santa Barbara. So it's a big project. It's going to take a long time. But it's been fascinating to see how many people have come forward with stories.
Well, and I think, you know, death comes in lots of different ways, and there's not just the physical deaths of the people, the precious people, but there was deaths of a lifestyle we knew, or death of terrain, and yet the beauty of this, and I think this is true often, is that in that great tragedy, people come together and they rise together. We support each other. We love each other. It's unfortunate that's what it takes sometimes, but that is part of the healing to me, is that you're not alone. We're here and we all come together to love one another. And
I've seen more hugging, haven't you?
I have.
In our whole town.
I have.
Yeah.
And there's that, again, that thing we were saying, that you don't take anything for granted because of it. So how much does a taping cost? And how could people, if they were interested in getting involved with Life Chronicles, they have someone they want to tape, how much does it cost, and what do they do?
So we used to say that we do the work for free. We are a nonprofit, but at the end of 20 years, we were so stressed. We do so much work. And we realized that we weren't proactively asking for help when we should have, that we'd served quite a number of people who could have really helped us, but we hadn't really proactively asked. So we changed our whole policy around this. It's been a little hard for me. I didn't start this to make money, but on the other hand, the reality is to keep an organization going, and certainly producing video and getting it all out, it takes staff, it takes everything.
Sure.
So we had to look at it realistically. So the policy now is that we ask for $3,500 for a video, and the fact is that no one gets turned away. So if we have people who say $3,500, is that enough? And they give us more, which is, you know, kind of proving the point that there were people who could have helped us and can help us. So we just make sure everyone understands that no one gets turned away. We figure out how to raise money for those people who can't donate toward their video, or help them find ways to raise money to do that for their families, but no one gets turned away.
And I believe on your website, people could certainly, if they're touched, can donate so other people can have this. And also, is it accurate that there's other videos that they can, can they see little samples of it,
You
other
can
stories?
see little samples on the homepage. We've been asked over the years if we're going to show whole videos, and we've never been very comfortable with that. We feel like these are very personal.
Right.
We do have Vimeo, private Vimeo links for families they can share with whoever they want to share, but unless we have permission to show clips, we really don't show full videos. But certainly people can watch the ones that we think are really, really wonderful. Even, we have a media page that has my BBC World Radio interview that I did. We have the documentary that was done by a former NBC producer.
Would you
called-
talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's called Remember Me, which if you've seen Coco, that's the theme song in Coco,
Right,
and
right.
that whole film is about remembering those who've passed. So when everybody kept saying, have you seen Coco yet? I couldn't figure out why. Now I know why. But a former NBC producer, Terry Schaefer, produced this 12-minute short documentary. It was at the Nantucket Film Festival and the Santa Fe Film Festival. But it's actually being worked on right now to turn it into a full feature. That's what she's working on. So.
And that documentary is also about you.
It's
and the
about
work.
me and the work. But
Well,
I
you're
always,
being modest because Kate, like any great nonprofit, it starts with a vision and a volunteer. That's how things get started. And so I know you're being really modest, but those of us who know Life Chronicles know you are the heart and soul of it, and the visionary and the intuitive. I mean, you get these results because of who you are. And even though you have programs and you're training others very well, you are the person that started remembering others. So
well,
don't
I did
be so
start
modest.
that, but I didn't know what I know today, and that's what I keep telling people. They say, oh, you can't train people to do it the way you do. I didn't do it the way I do now when I started. I learned a lot over 20 years, and that's what I'm passing on to others.
And that's a wonderful gift, and there's something just really precious about what you offer the community. And we're getting to the tail end of our show, so I have this book of life. I like to have people write in it. It says inside, to live in hearts we leave behind is not to die. So I'd want to invite you to put some precious names in there. And as we're getting ready to close the show, I'd like to again thank my crew, Elliot Jacobson and Michael Nicholson, Ken Baxter, and TVSB for the opportunity to show Living in Grace. Once again, this is Arlene Stepputat with Kate Carter of Life Chronicles. Thank you, Kate, for being our guest.
My pleasure.